got started at Geppi's Entertainment Museum in Baltimore. It was founded by an avid comic book publisher and collector. This museum boasts one of the largest known individual comic book collections, as well as many other items of popular culture. At its opening in September 2006, the museum attracted the creators of many of the best-known comics of all time. It's a place where comic fanatics and the general public can explore some of the greatest work of the cartoon medium and much more. So take a look at what Geppi's Entertainment Museum has to offer.
It's a time long gone, but not forgotten. For many, the best reminders of our past come from our childhood, the things we read, played with, or collected. Now, one of the greatest individual collections of comic books and pop culture memorabilia can be found preserved behind glass next to Camden Yards in Baltimore, Maryland.
What you're going to find in here is a timeline of 230 years of the country's history through the eyes of pop culture with a special accent on the comic character.
The recently opened Geppi's Entertainment Museum is the culmination of Stephen Geppi's life work, a search for rare collectibles that has spanned more than 30 years. Geppi is an avid hobbyist who eventually opened his own comic book store in the basement of a friend's house in Catonsville, Maryland. Geppi also founded Gemstone Publishing and Diamond Comic Distributors, which has become one of the largest distributors of English-language comics in the United States.
I was a mailman for the U.S. Postal Service, and I was watching my nephew read a comic book, and it sent me on a nostalgic journey into my past. Next thing I know, I was asking people on my mail route, you know, do you have any old comic books? I want to see if I can find some. And before I knew it, I was starting to accumulate collections, and I didn't know anything about value. I really didn't understand that they had, you know, monetary value. I was just getting them because I wanted to relive my childhood.
Reliving childhood memories is a big part of what the Geppi's Entertainment Museum is about. But the museum also aims to present the larger social, economical, and sometimes political influence of pop culture. With items that date back to 1776, including this early political cartoon by Ben Franklin, visitors can see historic rarities such as Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman. Other items in the collection feature such iconic characters as the Brownies, the first characters used to endorse products aimed at children.
This place is not just about value, because value is subjective. People are going to relive their childhoods and find something here that they might have had that they treasured and wish they still had, and we're hoping to create the collectors of tomorrow.
The opening night gala of the Geppi Entertainment Museum in September 2006 drew some of the comic book industry's top publishers and artists who've come to see their work on display.
There are magic moments as you grow up when your toys, your comics, your books are your first things that are all yours, and you love them and you treasure them, and it connects you to the innocence of your childhood, the magic moments of your childhood, and this is a place you can come and connect with them, whatever generation you come from.
The great thing about comics to me is that it combines a lot of different art forms. I mean, you can paint, you can write, and you can tell stories, and it's like cinema. So it's a mixture of cinema, painting, and writing, all combined.
I'm fortunate to have here tonight some of the greatest cartoonists in the industry, anywhere from Mort Walker, who created Beetle Bailey, who still runs in the paper today, to Jerry Robinson, who didn't create Batman, but created the Joker and was probably as influential on Batman in the 1940s as anyone, a very important guy in the cartoonist society today.
I never thought I'd be a cartoonist. I came to New York to be a journalist. I was studying journalism at Columbia University at 17 when I met Bob Kane and started on Batman. That was the first year of Batman. There was just a poll taken of international literary people to name their greatest literary villains of all time in all media, comics, literature, and the Joker came out #1. So I'm proud of that.
I began selling college cartoons, and one day I turned out I was the top-selling magazine cartoonist in the business in 1948. And my wife said, if you're the top seller and you only made $8,000, she said, I think you're in the wrong business. So I turned around and I said, you're right, I'm going to do a comic strip. And Beetle Bailey started out as a college student. Then the Korean War came along and they were drafting college students. And my editor says, you got to put him in the Army.
Mort Walker, the legendary creator of Beetle Bailey, still works on the comic strip today with his sons. Walker has seen many changes in the industry throughout the years. However, he's quick to point out that drawing comics is indeed an art form. Thanks to the museum, the significance of comics as art will be celebrated for years to come.
Well, they tell our history for one thing. You know, most history books talk about generals and presidents and so forth. But the comic strips, especially, are about the common guy.
At the opening night gala, local Baltimore celebrities included Joe Durham, who played on the first Baltimore Orioles team in 1954.
Well, often Annie, Mutt and Jeff was my favorite. I like those two guys. But that was a thing to do back in those days. Today, kids got so much to look forward to. The television and all the games they can play on television, the education within itself. We didn't have all that.
I remember very distinctly my first comic book. My mom brought me home a Batman comic book, and it was love at first sight. I was reading about Batman and Batmite, a character that they created. It was a kind of an oddball character that they created to mix up the stories. But I also love the Tubby and Lulu comics. To this day, I keep buying copies. I don't know how many I have of Tubby and his Clubhouse pals.
Geppi isn't the only one drumming up interest in the golden and silver age characters of pop culture. Today, several comic book companies are re-releasing older titles.
Aside from creating tomorrow's Americana right now, we also have great interest in previous years and decades. Dark Horse, for instance, produces some of the great comic strips, reproduces them in volumes. For instance, Little Lulu, we're reproducing the entire Little Lulu run. We have archives, upcoming Tarzan, the run of Tarzan in Dell Comics, and many other characters that were popular during the 40s and 50s.
Today, many of the classic comic book heroes, such as Superman and Spider-Man, are more recognized for their heroics on screen or in video games rather than on the printed page. While the industry has branched out and evolved, the Geppi's Entertainment Museum serves to remind us of the roots of popular culture.
This is wow. That's everybody. Hopalong Cassidy, even Amos and Andy, they're here.
It's got a lot of posters of things that I've only heard about, but never actually seen. Captain Midnight and stuff like that, which, you know, is like sort of like a part of American myth. But I've never actually seen the posters of it. So, you know, coming here and seeing them, it's a real buzz for me, and I think it's a really fascinating place.
It's an art, and it's done by very thoughtful people. They're telling stories, they're creating characters. You live with these characters. It's the world's most popular art.
1, 2, 3. Hey, and away we go. Come on down, as they say.
Here to tell us more about Geppi's Entertainment Museum is Dr. Arnold Blumberg, its curator. Dr. Blumberg holds a master's in publications design and a doctorate in communications design from the University of Baltimore. Welcome to the Daily Apple.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So when I was researching this, I was thinking to myself, I thought comics were for kids, clearly not by our segment. Why do you think adults are so interested in comics and comic books?
Well, I think the question is even less why are they interested, but why would we think they wouldn't be?
That's a good point.
And it's really a case of the United States of America being one of those few countries in the world that still to this day maintains a certain stigma about certain aspects of entertainment and pop culture that we feel compelled to compartmentalize them into different age groups. And it's really a very short period of time in history where anybody thought that comic characters and comic art was something that was entirely devoted to children. It's something that anybody can enjoy. But we tend to have a feeling in this country that as you reach a certain age, you're supposed to start reading real books and, you know, leaving behind the visual. And that's just equally as important to adults as it is to children. So
sure. When did comic books first come into being?
Well, the comic book format that we're most familiar with today, the 20 or 30 page pamphlet that you'd pick up at the 7-Eleven or something, is something that really came into being in this country in the early 1930s. But comic art and the whole idea of putting comics in sequential form to tell stories with characters go back centuries and reach back to the very beginning of human communication.
What about the impact of comics during World War II?
Well, it was a golden age. A lot of people in comics call it the golden age of comics, and there are different year ranges that people apply to that. But really it was a golden age because World War II provided a focal point predominantly for superheroes, but also for funny animal characters, cartoon characters like Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse. They were incredibly potent because these characters could speak to children at a time of incredible stress and tension and show them that America was going to be victorious. Everything was going to be okay. And at the same time, basically serve a sort of propaganda role from our perspective. And they spoke to adults too. I mean, people were going to see Superman and cartoons in the theaters and seeing Disney and feeling better about themselves.
Why do you think that there's such nostalgia attached to it, especially for mature adults like we saw in the segment?
Oh, because these are things you encounter as a child and you will never let them go. It's the most important thing. I mean, and as I often point out, and the segment earlier did too, is this idea that we are so enamored with chronicling our history, but we very often ignore the things that we choose to do when we go home at night. We've chronicled the wars we've fought, the jobs we have in the daytime, but it's when you go home and choose that entertainment, the thing that's going to take you away or make you feel better or tell you something about yourself that's even more indicative of who we are as a people. And when you're a child and you encounter these characters, they're imprinted. They're never going away. An 80-year-old man can walk into Geppi's Entertainment Museum, for instance, and find a character he encountered at the age of 8, and it will have the same emotional resonance because this is something that meant something so important. So
perhaps we're at the stage of the renaissance of comic books.
I certainly hope so. The signs are there.
Thank you for your time.
No problem.
Very interesting.